Alright, guys, the Four Agreements, pages 19. I only read 19 to the beginning of 21. I wanted to break up that section, and I'm losing daylight because I'm reading this in the evening. It's 8:08 p.m. right now. I'm sitting outside. I mean, I could have technically read it, but I was like, man, it's getting late, and I've got some other stuff I want to do too. Um, but yeah, very very good section. It goes from talking about examples of how we abuse ourselves and connect towards abuse towards ourselves, have a sense of shame and guilt, and there's kind of a connection between that and how worthy or worthless a person feels about themselves, how we feel about ourselves, and then what we will accept from other people as far as how they treat us, good or abusively or however it may be. So I thought, that seemed like a section that is good to kind of not blend into maybe, I mean, it's not really a section, it's just a couple pages, but not really blend it into other topics. I'm pretty sure that it's going to get expanded into more details, but it was kind of, when I was reading it, something that I was getting reminded of is, way back, I used to have this friend that, how, when you have a lot of female friends, it's not uncommon for your female friends to be talking about marriage. And I was in a place where I used to interact with a lot of people my own age. Some people were like a little under 20, some people were like a little over 30, and like everywhere in between. And so probably from about the ages of like 18 to like 32, 33 or so, I knew a lot of people in that age range. And so, I knew people in their 20s and 30s who were kind of getting married. And this friend of mine was, really nice friend. Really great friend. Me and this person, I never had a falling out with her. Like, I don't tend to have falling outs with people, but I wouldn't say that she was like a hurtful person. Like, she was very thoughtful of other people, very kind, compassionate, always helping out, always kind spirited, had a good attitude, funny, just really loving towards people. And I was pretty surprised, not judging her, but just pretty surprised when she was mentioning like how, when other people would talk about marriage, it wasn't uncommon for people to be like, oh, like, are you dating anyone? Like, are you going to get married? And like having these kind of conversations about the future and all this kind of stuff. And like, what kind of person would you want to date? I mean, that's like the age range where people are often talking about these things with people they trust. And so that was a common kind of topic of conversation. And I was a little surprised that, this person kind of felt like they weren't worthy enough to like get married, or like who's going to want to, not necessarily like who's going to want them. Like, not that they thought that they were unattractive or thought of themselves as unattractive, or because they weren't, or thought of themselves as like bad or whatever. I don't know what it was, but I was a little surprised just because I was like, wow, like, it's easy to think that everybody kind of has it together, and it's like, wow, like, not like in a like spectator kind of way, but like I was just, it was kind of a powerful experience for me to kind of hear that person say that, because I had always kind of thought, okay, when there's like people who are kind of like really beautiful and seems like their lives are pretty nice, and like, no one really knows all the depths of details of what every single person has going on. You know, like I started to learn more about them and kind of realize, okay, maybe their life isn't as easy as it might seem on the surface, or maybe, you know, there's some stuff that, you know, if I put myself in their shoes, I'm like, wow, I would be kind of hurt by that if I had family members talking to me that way, or I would be kind of hurt by that if I had this kind of experience of like some other person getting in my way for that reason or whatever. Like I started to realize more and more. I was like, oh, this, you know, I never thought everyone's life was perfect necessarily, but I thought that this person's life, like on the surface, looked pretty, you know, maybe not easy, but like pleasant, you know, it seemed pretty pleasant. And so, you know, I kind of assumed that, you know, they thought very pleasantly about themselves and very high self-esteem about themselves and very like positive about themselves, you know. And I was pretty surprised to know that they didn't think that. And, you know, I mean, I always appreciate when people can like share vulnerably about stuff like that, like, because it's kind of, you know, like I think that's something a lot of people don't say, you know. And, you know, it's hard to like trust people to like say something like that. But then it's also very interesting reading it in the book where it talks about that too. It touches on that, you know, like um how people might not feel that they're worthy, and then how they treat themselves, you know, and this kind of like dynamic between how we treat ourselves and how we allow other people to treat us. And that was, you know, that was kind of the part that stuck out to me the most in those couple pages, was when they mentioned that like how can somebody, you know, like basically they're saying that, you know, if somebody allows someone to treat them even a little bit bad, then that likely means that they treat themselves a little bit worse than a little bit bad. Like, because we always potentially would treat ourselves worse than any other person. So if you think of the people who treat us the absolute worst, we've likely treated ourselves worse than that. And so seeing, like from the outside, like seeing another person who's maybe in an abusive relationship, then they potentially might internally abuse their own selves more than that abusive person is abusing them. Like, I don't really know about that, but I really don't know, because everyone's individual. I don't think it's maybe like a 1-in-1 ratio like that, maybe. But I mean, I think maybe it's in a way true to some extent, maybe for a lot of people. Maybe not everybody, but maybe for a lot of people. I don't know if I could say most or what, like, because I don't know. This is kind of like a new way of thinking about it. For me, it's not something I've never heard before, but it's something that I never thought is maybe more prevalent than it might seem. And especially, you know, like, I'm not going to go on a rant about social media, but especially when we have like social media and things like that. Like, you know, I remember getting off Facebook because I felt like it was negative. You know, everyone was kind of like talking about politics and all these kind of like intense topics that I was like, these people just ranting and like fighting on the internet. And I was like, oh, this is a lot. Like, like these pastors are going at each other or whatever. But, yeah, just seeing like so much, like just people just like acting so hatefully towards each other. But, yeah, not just the hateful actions, but of what they wrote, but you know, just it wasn't, you know, people weren't being fully like, you know, compassionate on there, and it was fine. That was just the nature of the time that when I was on there, like when I was on there more often, it just started feeling pretty negative. Like whenever I looked on there, it was just like people complaining about stuff. And I was just like, goodness. And so I was like, I kept Facebook, but gravitated more towards like Instagram. And, you know, because I wasn't always active on Instagram, but I'm not like active. I hardly post. I'm trying to post once every other month. I mean, not even once a month, but once every other month. I'm trying to post or maybe once a month. Like if I go to an event, I'm trying to post 1 or 2 pictures from that event. I don't like it. I don't like it at all, and I don't think I'm going to keep doing it. But it was kind of like, I have weird New Year's resolutions, and that was kind of one that I was like, let me test it out, test the waters. I don't like it. It's too, I feel a certain kind of way if certain kind of people comment on certain things, or what they comment about, or if they don't comment on it, or if different people come out of the woodwork. So I'm like, oh shit, like I didn't know they could see this, like I don't like it. I'm just like, what is this? Like, this is too much sharing of too many things with too many people. Like, I don't want to share all that with everybody. Like, I wanted, there's specific people that I talk to about this, like certain stuff, like if it's me going to a metal concert, I don't want to share that with everybody. Like, I did share it with everybody, but I was like, I don't want to share this with everybody. I want to share it with just a select few of my friends that like metal. Like, why would I want to talk to everybody about it all the time? Like, I know they don't like it, So, I don't know. I was pretty, I'm pretty, like, I don't know. I don't want to post like that on social media, but I know some people love to post. I don't love to post. I love to look at other people's posts. That makes me happy. But I guess what I was trying to say is like, looking at people's posts, usually people post things that they like, that are happy, or something that maybe is like politically, like something they don't agree with. Like, I don't technically, repost, a lot of political things, but with some of the stuff going on with like the drag queens and LGBT culture, and some of the other stuff going on about like the Dodgers and the Sisters of Mercy kind of like situation, and now this current thing with like Target and like the Pride brand, the Pride flag branded type of, clothing and stuff like that, and like all these types of things coming up. I'm like, sometimes I'm like, I kind of want to speak up about this. This is actually something that's important to me. But usually all the other stuff is not important enough to me to make too much effort to really talk about, it's like, but I do think sometimes maybe, I'm not saying I need to make like some kind of powerful stance, but it's like, I do think sometimes, people look at my posts, not that they do necessarily, but people might gravitate towards my posts more a little bit some of the times, because I don't hardly post anything. So when I do post something, they're like, oh, I want to see what you posted, but I'm not usually interested in posting that much stuff. I'll send individual pictures. I'll blow up people's phones with a bunch of pictures and videos and stuff, like while I'm there, or like immediately. I'm like, I want these people to see this, and I'll send it and share it with them. But I don't like all the sharing of everything like that. Like, to me, that's not what I want to share. But some people, there is not, I wouldn't say, I don't know that many people who I would say, like, at least in my life, seem to like attach a lot of their self-worth to social media. But I mean, I remember back in the MySpace days, man, like, freaking Tom in one of your top 8s, and then you could only have 7 friends up there, and the second one of them gets, like, dude, one friend called me once and was like, why am I no longer on your top 8? And I'm like, I didn't even know that you weren't on my top 8. Like, how am I supposed to know this? Like, it would cause drama, and I'm like, goodness. Or like, posting on social media. Like, before, I used to post on Facebook way back a little bit more often, and then, posting on there, and then people kind of know where you're at, and then they're like, why didn't you invite me? And like, all this kind of stuff. And it's like, like, I kind of take that a little personally. It's like, sometimes I want to hang out with certain friends doing certain things, and then with other friends, I don't do those things. Or maybe I don't want them there. Like, I think I should have every right to not want everybody in every space all the time. But yeah, like sometimes it does get a little bit like challenging, and like it's not even that big of a deal in my life, like, but I do feel a kind of way when I post. I'm like, I don't need to have any attachment or like confusion of like, does this person really like me because they never heart my things? It's like, what? Like, I found myself kind of like thinking like that. And I was like, okay, like that's a little far, like if I would have never posted this thing, I never would have had that thought. Like I never would question, somebody's friendship over like a Facebook post or like Instagram or whatever. But maybe over other things, but not that kind of stuff. But I don't know, like when it comes to, things like topics like worthiness and abuse and things like that. I mean, those are definitely heavy topics. It's easy for me to want to make jokes around a whole bunch of other like nonsense, but like on social media and stuff. But um yeah, like I do think that it's hard for people to talk about those types of things, and it's not common. And when I think about it, I think a lot of people are pretty insecure, myself included. Like, I'm not saying like I am by any means perfect. I mean, you guys hear me on here. I'm like posting all the time about my life. Like, does it sound perfect? I mean, like, it's not. I mean, it's good enough. Like I like it, and some days are definitely easier than others. I've had quite a few pretty good days lately, but a lot of challenges. But it's like, it's not that bad. Like none of it's like that bad. Like I still have options around a lot of corners, but some of these options are kind of lengthy waits, if you want to call it that. They're kind of lengthy waits, and so yeah, there's a bit of a waiting process with a lot of this kind of stuff, and I don't know. Like I'm uh I'm pretty I don't know. Like I would say I'm pretty inspired by a lot of things coming from this book so far. Like I'm only a few days into it, into just doing a few pages at a time, and I feel like um I don't know if I ever read this book. Like I've had it for a really long time, but I feel like if I did read it, I breezed through it and I don't remember it. For some reason I kept it. Maybe because it's small. But yeah, when I moved, I threw away a bunch of stuff, even stuff that I was like I kind of maybe want some of my stuff a little bit, but I was like, it's anything that kept me from having to rent a moving van or whatever was ideal to get rid of. I was like, if I have to make multiple trips or rent another vehicle just to get this stuff to LA, I don't want it. Like, just get rid of as much as possible to not have to do that. So this was something that I decided to keep. My car is super small, the Mitsubishi Eclipse is super small. So I don't have that much space to be putting a bunch of stuff. So whatever fit in the car was what was going to come with me. And so this book was one of the things that made it to LA. And so yeah, like it's pretty powerful. Like I like reading things in shorter spurts. I mean, this book you could easily read it in like a night, Like it's not that it's a little heavy, but it's not that it's not like dense reading material. Like the spacing is really good. The margins are really wide. It's it's an easy read, like physically just reading through it. Like the font is kind of large. It doesn't have that many pages, but sometimes I like books like that to just take them and you know, read sections, like make my own little sections and make it more of a kind of like daily reflection, daily kind of like thought kind of thing. But yeah, those are hard concepts, you know. Abuse is a hard concept. And so is worthiness, so is shame, so is guilt. But I guess what they're trying to say is all of these concepts are wrapped up into all these concepts and experiences. They're all real experiences, either physically real or like internally real or whatever they may be. They're real, you know. And you know, these experiences are basically being kind of, I don't want to say played out necessarily, because if somebody's being abused, I mean, they're not necessarily, I wouldn't say, you know, that the fault is on them. I mean, the person abusing has fault. They're the ones abusing somebody. And I try to be careful. My first paper I wrote in undergraduate psychology in community college, my first psych paper that I got interested in was about blaming the victim. And so basically I made these surveys about situation, like, I don't know what kind of situation, I can't remember now, but it was something along the lines of a negative thing happening, like a scenario where you would read it and it's like some negative thing happened. I don't know if it was triggering or not, but say it's like, you know, Tommy and Steve were walking down the driveway and, you know, Tommy yelled at Steve and Steve pushed Tommy and Tommy slipped and fell and got an injury. Whose fault, what percentage of fault is it that, you know, one of them, that one guy pushed the other one? What percentage of fault is it that the other guy got injured? Like, what percentage of fault is it that the person initially screamed, like, at the other person? Like, I don't know, trying to, like, gauge percentages of fault or whatever. Like, it's kind of hard to say. Like, I don't remember if that's exactly how I did it. I think there were, like, 2 percentages, not 3 percentages. But, like, you had to, like, either say, like, who was more at fault or something like that. Like, there was a scenario, and then there were other little, like, multiple choice questions on, like, it's on, like, a Likert scale. And it would be, like, you know, is this person at fault? Like, you know, like somebody crashes into your car from the back while you're at a light, like at a red light. Is that your fault? Is that their fault? Like what percentage of fault is it the driver's fault or the car that got hit? Like, what percentage of fault is it their fault or whatever? Like, there'd be questions like that on, like, Likert scales. And then I was comparing, I don't know what I was comparing. I think maybe the Likert scale questions were actually related to the scenario question. And then they were like, there was some coding involved for, like, I don't remember, guys. This is like freaking 15 years ago or something. But anyways, just that concept of blaming the victim is something that I try to be careful about, because that's one thing that I learned about very early on, about, you know, how people blame a person who was wronged. Now, I'm not saying that every time somebody's wronged, it's never their fault, but, like, at all. But it's like, you know, I think about, like, abuse and things like that. It's like, you know, if I'm not blaming the victim, it's very hard for me to see scenarios where it's, you know, where there's like, where it's considered appropriate, I guess, for someone to be abusive. Like, I don't know if that really exists. I mean, like, forms of discipline where somebody might think that someone's treating them unfairly. Like, I'm not saying like abusive discipline. I just mean discipline, like, if somebody says, like, sends their kid to their room or whatever and is like, go to your room and, like, think about that you smacked your sister in the face or whatever, like, and, the kid that gets sent to their room a lot of times might be angry that they're getting punished, but it's like, I don't think that's necessarily, like, in itself, you know, like a harsh punishment. Like, I'd say if you send your kid to their room, like, for an extreme amount of time or like something extreme, or there's never a conversation, or like you're yelling at them and screaming at them and then they go to the room or something, like, there's scenarios where it could be definitely abusive, but it's like, I'm not talking about those. I'm just talking about just like a common, like, grounding of some form. you know I don't think that that's, like, considered abusive, really. Like, but, kids don't like nobody likes having things taken away or being told they can't do stuff. But I think it can push to a point where it's too much, for sure. But I'm not talking about, like, discipline that's, like, trying to teach, and correct certain, like, behaviors through a form of, like, punishment. Like, I don't think punishment is always abuse. I don't believe that at all, but I think it's kind of hard to know maybe how sensitive to be towards the person being punished. I think that might not always be too obvious. Like, parents or, like, disciplinarians might think that they're not being too harsh, but if you have a kid that's, like, super sensitive or has really low self-esteem or something like that and they're being punished, I mean, they might get traumatized by something like that. So it's kind of hard to really tell. Like, people can have completely good intentions and it can still be abusive towards somebody else. And then there are people who just outright are out of control and they just are abusive towards people and they can't help doing it. Even if they do feel bad, or even if they don't feel bad, they do it anyways. And that is completely different. I would never want somebody to think that, like, if they're in a situation like that I was saying, like, oh, it's your fault. I don't believe that way at all. I do think there are options for most people to be able to get to a safe environment. It might take time. It might take a lot of energy, and it might actually be very risky for a lot of people too. And so I don't need to go into the scenarios I've come across even through work and stuff, but it's like, yeah, like, there's a lot of kind of shady people out there that do a lot of abusive things that make it so that other people really can't get what they need. Like I had a family member of one of my clients who was an abusive brother who got a power of attorney to have to be in all the sessions, had ability to be in every session, nurse session, doctor session, therapy session, case management sessions, every single session, had access to this person's money, all kinds of things. And, that person was not the best person to have the power of attorney, as we found out, unfortunately. But, the situation got resolved, but it's like, it took a while. Like, it was like months, of having to kind of, like, dodge and weave and, like, bob and weave and kind of, like, do different things. And, like, they were still within the law. A lot of times that can be hard too, is when there's abuse going on and somebody's still within the law, where they can still harass people or still do these things wrong to other people, and the other person is still being victimized, even if it's something like harassing by emails or, things like that, where it's like, it might seem subtle, but it's like, it's still, like, triggering to a person, and so it's like, you can't easily get someone to stop sending you emails, like, they can make however many email accounts they want to make, and say it wasn't them, like, I guess it can be traced, I guess, eventually, but it's like, like, is a victimized person really gonna go to court and get all this kind of like detective type of work done just to trace that some abusive person is still sending them messages? It's like that's a lot of effort to have to bring up. I'm not saying don't do it, but it's a lot of effort to have to bring up something, keep bringing it up and talking about it and taking time out of that person's like busy schedule and stuff to like deal with this kind of stuff. And it's like I've worked with people that have had those types of scenarios going on where it's like I would in no way be like, oh yeah, that's their fault. It's like, yes, there are maybe solutions, but it's like taking the solutions isn't that easy either for most people. It's not just like, hey, change the locks, move out tomorrow, I got my own job, all my paperwork, I'll be good without you. Usually there's usually more than just that kind of reason that a person's staying. Like there's usually some other stuff going on too, that's like more restricting that person and keeping them in a risky, vulnerable position to not be able to kind of act the way that they logically could maybe act. But it's like there's a lot of fear and a lot of risk and a lot of, sometimes it is a dangerous situation. And so, it's not always, yeah, sorry, I don't mean to get like morbid. I'm just saying, like, I really want to make it clear that I'm not, I try really hard not to like blame people for things that they have going wrong in their lives. But it's kind of um um it's a lot to think about, belief systems around those experiences. It's hard to sit with that kind of stuff and just process it and think through it and dig through it and like challenge it. It's not easy to kind of perpetuate. It's not easy to let it continue, but it's also not easy to try to like get into a practice of kind of like decreasing it more and more, so you could feel better about yourself. Like that doesn't feel too normal either sometimes. Like I have some friends that, express that I wouldn't say that my self-esteem is high. They don't say that. They're not saying my self-esteem isn't high. They're not saying that to me, but it's like, my thought went somewhere weird. I'm a little, okay. What I was trying to say was, I've had friends mention that, they don't feel like they have a lot of high self-esteem, and I don't always feel like I have high self-esteem either. It just kind of comes and goes. I notice it's like if I'm feeling good, then I don't really think about it as much. But if I'm not feeling very well, then it's very easy for me to point out plenty of issues going on. So I don't really know, like exactly, like I don't really know like exactly, if I'm, I'm not really one to speak on this topic necessarily, but it's just interesting to say the least that so many people don't think very highly of themselves. And I get surprised when there's people I know that don't think highly of themselves, because most of the people I know, I'm like, wow, like there's a lot of things that a lot of people I know have together far better than I do, and I can look around and be like, wow, like this person really has this area of their life together or that area of their life together. But none of us is perfect. And some of us, we have flaws that are just like out there in the open. I know I'm a little bit on the eccentric end, and so it's like I kind of just do what I want, and march to the beat of my own drum. And I think once people kind of get to know me, they're like, oh, you're just kind of weird. Like, I do things weird. Like, I don't care if my car is like 21 years old. Like, I don't care, like certain things that like most people would be like I definitely do need another car, but like the types of things that most people would probably be like, I'm definitely going to jump on this right away. I'm like, nah, like I'll just stick it out a little bit and like, find other options to do other things and fix certain stuff. And like, I feel like I like the process of learning, sometimes, maybe more than other people might, but it's like I have a lot of hobbies that are a little bit tedious, and, I like learning sometimes, and other times I'm like, oh, like I'd rather just be creative, and like, I get a lot out of it, but I don't really know what everybody else, you know, I don't know. I do weird stuff. I know that. But people don't stop inviting me out or like introducing me to people. So that's why I'm like, okay, I can't be doing that bad because people aren't avoiding me. you know, like no, I don't think I really don't think I do that bad socially. Honestly, I've got great friends. We're all very patient with one another most of the time. Like, yeah, I'm very lucky to have a great group of friends. Like, I am just honored and lucky for sure. And I try to contribute to the group, I try not to be just like mooching off of all the goodness and provide, quality, within the relationship of the unit and within the individual relationships with people. But, it's not always easy, but, it doesn't help sometimes too, though, to just think like that. Like, to just think of all the, like, negatives and all the possibilities of things that aren't going right and all that. It's kind of like, it's very one-sided. Like, when I look, because I've recently had, like, patches of time where I felt like, okay, like, there's so many days where it was just like I was just grinding and like things didn't feel like they were going right. But even if I look back at a recent exam that I took, it's like I wasn't ready to take that stupid test. I was probably at my worst like my worst functionality. Not the absolute worst, but I know I'm sharper than how I was in that test. I know I can get better sleep. I know I can be less stressed. I know I can be way more focused. That was not an on day. That was an off day for sure. And I was able to pass the test being so off. And the only thing I could think about was like shortly after was, man, like how much I let myself get stressed, and like, I've been working on this and trying to work on my stress levels, and like maybe it's not working and all that kind of thing, when it's like, dude, I passed the freaking test. Like, I didn't even think to be like, good, I don't have to do it again. Like, I passed it, with all that stress and all that anxiety, I was able to pass the stupid test. And sometimes it's like that kind of idea doesn't come right away. Like, I wasn't able to kind of see outside of the quality that I had expected for myself. Like, I expected to like not get like comments about, that I didn't seem very confident in some of my answers. I'm like, I know I didn't seem confident because I wasn't freaking confident, and, but I mean, a little bit, they weren't harsh about it, but I'm like, it's true. Like, I could feel it. I knew it. I was stumbling through this test, on an off day, and I managed to pass. I mean, that's pretty impressive, honestly. Like, I'm not gonna like toot my own horn. I didn't do that great, but I did good enough that I don't have to take it again, but I could consider taking it again, if that makes sense. I could probably score higher, but I think I'm ready to just move on. Let's just move on, and not go back. I feel like I'll still learn the skills better. Like, I'm still practicing them, and I'm also distracting myself from practicing them by doing projects that take way too long, but that have nothing to do with it. But I don't know, guys. Like, I guess what I'm trying to say with that is when it comes to reflecting, that can be really powerful to keep reflecting on things if within your own limitations and your own comfort. Like, I'm not saying like just keep laser focused on, reflecting on things that bother you. Like, you got to have a break and you got to balance it out, but making time for that kind of stuff and spending some energy on it and working through it, sometimes I do notice that when I reflect on things, I'm like, wow, I felt like not so good about the way that went. And then I think about it later on, and then later on, and then later on, if I notice that there's something that I don't feel like too great about, I notice that over time I'm a lot more understanding with myself about things. I'm like, oh, like, it was fine. Like, overall, like, it was fine. But when it's kind of like raw in the moment of something happened, it's like, oh my God, how could I have said this stupid thing to this person? Like something like that, where it's just like, oh my God, like how could I have like made a joke like that and it was so insensitive, or like something that's like, even if somebody wasn't like outwardly mad at me about something, I can still find myself being like, wow, that was not good enough. And it's like, there's nothing wrong with knowing, that you have some weaknesses or faults, but it's like, I think, it makes more sense to put the energy into trying to find ways to catch ourselves in it, and change where we can, and not spend so much effort into beating ourselves up over it, but more effort in actually trying to get right, and thinking through, okay, how can I actually problem solve to do this differently, like, what do I notice is coming up before this happens, or whatever. Like, if it's something that keeps happening, like, I don't know, but it can be anything. But I think that when I think about it with my mind as it is right now, like, I'm a little tired, but it's like I'm a little focused and a little bit clear too. And I feel like thinking about it like right now, I do feel a little bit like I can kind of talk about it more easily and more clearly, which is one thing I do like about recording in the evenings. Sometimes I'm way out of it, but then sometimes I'm a lot more like thoughtful. And in the mornings, usually I'm just trying to get on with the rest of my day. I'm just kind of like, some mornings I'm just like, I just need to like go do what I need to do, But I don't know, like, sometimes it just seems that way. Um, Sometimes it just seems um, like, I don't know, it's easy to flow into some weird pattern that just doesn't work. Like, none of us is perfect. We're all gonna make mistakes with ourselves, with other people, with all kinds of stuff. We make mistakes. Um, and, we're gonna continue to make mistakes. And, you know, it's, I feel like as long as we're not hurting ourselves or other people, and especially if it's not intentional, and if it's not like permanently damaging, then I feel like, or damaging in general, like, I think it's okay. We're gonna make mistakes, and some of us will make big mistakes every so often. Um, but I do think at any level, it's still good to kind of have a type of person to talk to about it, or like, you know, like, if they're willing, or like someone who is good at having like deeper thoughts about things, and you can kind of just like actually talk to them, even if it's honestly like, even if it's like some anonymous chat room kind of thing. Like, I don't know, that sounds weird maybe, but like Seven Cups or something like that, like where it's like peer support focused kind of app that kind of helps people like process things and talk through things while they're typing it, and like I mean, it's not as good as it used to be, but it's kind of okay. Like the free version, I mean, is kind of okay. Just to get your thoughts out sometimes, just to kind of think something through. I've always found it kind of helpful, but sometimes it's not because they're kind of not supportive. I feel like it's not helpful for always having a supportive ear, but it's helpful for kind of like helping you to kind of write things down and kind of see kind of what thoughts come out about it. And maybe if you get a good person on the other end, they'll kind of ask you a few thought-provoking questions that are like deeper than how you've been able to think about it on your own. Like I used to find that app really helpful for that, for just like thinking outside the box more easily, when I was kind of like either in a negative headspace or something. But I feel like it's not a good like emotional support. It's more like a good support with like trying to like emotionally process things a little bit. Um, but also, I mean, they do have paid therapy on there too. It's pretty effective. Um, as far as like texting and typing and stuff, if you don't like that kind of thing, you probably wouldn't like it. But um, I think compared to other apps like BetterHelp and those kind of apps, you get more than four therapy sessions once, uh, 4 therapy sessions a month, which is about one therapy session every 7 days or so. Um, you usually get kind of more, but then it's kind of spread out more. Um, but I don't know, like it's kind of like a good app that's, not too like formally psychological, but it's kind of very like you can pop in, pop out when you feel like it. Low commitment. Um, you can just use it like as needed. But I would just say honestly, it's not, in my opinion, it's not the best for emotional support because sometimes the people, they don't know you and they're not like for some people they might find it helpful for that, but I never found it helpful for that. Like that's where I felt disappointed with it at times. It didn't really seem like emotionally supportive. It seemed kind of more like supportive for like just running ideas by somebody. Like it almost felt like, if you had like a teacher who was like someone that you never really had a class with, but maybe you popped into their class on occasion to like talk to your friends after school or something, so they kind of knew of you, and then once you went to that teacher for advice or something like that, like it's maybe like that, like kind of like you're not really like always interacting with this person, like they're available like because they're on the internet, but it's like they're not really like, like I'm not saying that like it's like an attachment like to get deeper connected to them necessarily, but it's like as far as like somebody kind of like it seems like there's like this emotional disconnection and just kind of like this, okay, they want to get through the chat real quick kind of thing. Like it's not like good for like, I'd say if you need a friend, you probably should talk to your friends, or find a space where it's more geared towards that kind of social friendship type of thing, like connections and things like that. Like it's not um too great for like connections necessarily. Um like I wouldn't say to necessarily go there with that as like the issue you have going on and like depend on it or anything. Um but I am a big believer in like finding methods that work for like trying to think through things and get like a deeper understanding about certain concepts and experiences for sure. And one thing that's kind of hard to um, realize sometimes is like an experience can be, usually it's like we would probably say our experience of the day is like when I wake up in the day and how I feel and what I start doing in the mornings, and like get myself out the door to go be busy and do what I've got to do with the busy lifestyle. And then, once I come home and relax, and what do my evenings look like? What do my afternoons look like? How am I spending my time and energy? Or what happened to me, or what have I happened to? And, just kind of what was going on throughout the day. But a lot of times too, a lot of times, it's hard for people to kind of sit with themselves. I have a hard time with it too. I love being busy and not like meditating a lot and think like those are hard days for me. Like when I have a day like the other day, or a couple days like that, where I try to meditate once every hour or so. Even if I miss it, it's like whatever. But like I try to meditate like once every hour for like a little bit. It's not like an hour long meditation every hour, but it's like, I try to meditate like every hour for a little while, and just I try to push past that little part that's like, all right, it's time for me to like stop now. And I try to push a little into that, a little bit, not too much. But sometimes I'll push way into it, but usually I don't try to do it every single time, because that would make me not want to do it at all. But sometimes I'll push past it, and I always hit like a point of discomfort of some kind. And I know I can push past it, and I'm not saying everybody has to, or I don't think I'm better if I do push past it. I don't know if that's even a good thing or not. Like, I just do it because I like to see what's going to happen, or how I'm going to feel, if it's going to feel different or better or worse or what. I like to do that kind of stuff because obviously that's the kind of thing that I'm interested in sometimes. But it is challenging. It's not like super easy. And meditation, I don't think has to be like a challenge. It doesn't have to be like, oh, like, yes, like, like I feel the pump, It doesn't have to be like that. It could be like, just, even doing it just to feel relaxed or more focused or like recentered, it doesn't have to be like I push to my limits, but, yeah, like, it does help though to have like different avenues that you can take to kind of process things. That's probably what I would say the most, is, trying to find ways to take time with yourself. And, I have trouble doing that a lot too. Like I'll go weeks or days and then weeks without really sitting still too long, and like thinking and like, what am I doing? Um, I'll do a lot in a day sometimes. And I like being busy too, but it's like, I do get a lot of joy out of it. I like stimulated environments, but sometimes I like really low stimulation environments. And so it kind of just depends. But sometimes I need one and not the other, and I'd rather stay in the one that I don't need, and avoid the one that I do need. So, yeah, like I've definitely got some habits that maybe aren't like the best or making things easier on myself necessarily sometimes, but I do actually do other stuff that I think I take it easy. On some ends more than some people maybe. But I don't know, like I think like I'm wondering how people might have like different forms of like expression about some of these experiences, because a lot of the internal experiences we kind of avoid having them. We tend to fill the space with something, whether that's TV. Like I feel like maybe not back in the day, but a little bit back in the day, like the last thing you would maybe see was like the television, And then if you had a TV in your room, maybe the television was on when the lights were off. I don't know. Um, or, yeah, maybe there was that. Or maybe you had, um, a book. And you were reading the book or a newspaper or something you were reading, before bed. And then the little bit of time before bed is like bedtime. But I think most of us were not, at least in, American culture, mainstream American culture, most of us weren't, maybe younger generations now, but I feel like most of us weren't raised with like, meditating and things like that. Like it's not part of maybe American culture just from America itself. Like people definitely do it in this country. I'm on the West Coast, so it's like California, like people meditate. There are hippies here. I've been around different like eccentric types of settings like since I was pretty young and kind of knew that there were some people that lived life in ways that I was not taught about how to live that way, or not even in a bad way. I'm just saying, like, I would see them at Venice Beach and like all kinds of people doing all kinds of things that I was like, what is this? It must be working for them because they're doing it. So I was always kind of like interested in other things too, as well as what I was being taught. But yeah, I do think it is hard to get used to, spending time with ourselves. And a lot of times, when we're the busiest, that's when we need it the most. When we're the most stressed, that's when we need it the most. Like, I literally, like, I've been applying for jobs and stuff, and I had to, like, tell myself, I'm like, it doesn't make sense for you to, like, keep putting out applications. It's like 9 p.m., 10 p.m. It's like, what difference does it make? Like, they're not going to see it any faster necessarily. Like, like, wake up early and do it rather than stay up late and do it, because it's like I still got a whole day the next day that I've got to like get stuff done. I've got to be alert and energetic to do what I need to do. So staying up late isn't going to help. But just stuff like that it's like, it can be little bitty things, but a lot of that kind of stuff really adds up. But yeah, I thought this would be a lot shorter. I rambled a lot, I know. But yeah. Sometimes I want to record something a little bit longer, and sometimes I have more to say. I know I'm not maybe talking exactly about the same topic the whole time in this episode, but these are kind of the branches where my mind kind of goes to like things that are kind of like these other little nodes that are kind of like relevant. But yeah. All right, I'm going to end this recording. Thanks for listening.